Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about The Waker, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder by David Grann. I watched The Killer of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese when it came out, and I really liked the story of the movie. When I found out that it's from a book, I tried to look it up, and the author is a journalist that has written multiple books, including The Killer of the Flower Moon that I just saw and this book. I should get The Killer of the Flower Thing book first, but this book was on a monthly discount list on the bookstore that I often go to, so I immediately grabbed it. I've read it since then and it's actually really interesting. I also found out that the book is being adapted to by Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, so that's cool I guess. I know the title of the video now. And it's also been a while since we last saw Leo on the ocean. Now the book is a non-fiction book about a shipwreck in 1740s, a few decades after the golden age of pirates. The Wager, the name of the ship and the title of the book, is a British man of war that became a part of a secret mission to raid a Spanish treasure galleon. But along the way, the ship got wrecked by a hurricane and believed to be sunken entirely, killing all the crews. But about a year later, 283 days to be exact, 30 men arrived in the southeastern side of Brazil in what resembled a ship if it was made using scraps. They were back on board and they looked so weak, one of them even died shortly after they arrived. These are the survivors of the West that miraculously have survived the shipwreck. They said there were more than 80 of them when they first left using the shipwreckage, but 50 of them died during their travel to where they are now. They were hailed as soldiers coming back from war, and life pretty much went back to normal until 6 months later, a much smaller ship arrived in the southwestern part of Chile. On the ship was 3 additional survivors of the West that looked even worse than the first 30 that came before them. They look so emaciated with insect-eating parts of their body. One of the 3 has lost so much of his mind that he did not even remember his own name. They were treated until they recovered, then they go back to England when they revealed quite a shocking information. The 30 men that has arrived 6 months earlier were not heroes. They were mutineers that have chosen to abandon ship. Both parties, the accuser and the accused, will go to court and told their share of the story at that time, and it was during this court that we know that the ship managed to run until they were stranded on an island with below freezing temperature. They also have almost no resources that the crew is said to have resorted to cannibalism. The trial also made things difficult for England since they paint themselves to be the good guy that is spreading civilization across the world instead of, just another villainous colonizer. Meanwhile, both party life literally hang on the line because whomever was proven to be guilty will be hanged according to 1700 law. The book will go through time and the life of the crew to help us better understand who is innocent and who is guilty during the infamous Wedge Mutiny case. We first go to the first lieutenant David Chip, who is not having a good time online. He got into a fight with his siblings over inheritance. He had a massive debt that left him maintenance and chased by creditors, but he can live all that while he's on board of His Majesty's ship Centurion, HMS Centurion. But currently he seems to be cursed because the Centurion is stuck on dock because its fitting process doesn't seem to be making any progress. Along with Chip is his captain George Anson, another person who seems out of place at land. He's not that good at communicating, and just like most modern people, he doesn't read much, so doesn't know much about the world he lives in. But fortunately for him, at least at sea, everyone agrees that he's a formidable seaman. Being the sixth son of the second wife from a father that already gave birth to 7 children with his first wife, Chip got his inheritance taken by the eldest son of the first wife born and got into a massive debt despite attempting to work at a commerce to make a living, which is why he escaped to sea, and he did quite well there, helping capture pirates like the one-handed Irishman Henry Johnson. But besides that one time he captured a pirate, for both Chip and Anson there hasn't been much opportunity to make a name for themselves, so they're hoping that with the Centurion there is an opportunity while the rivalry between Europe and Spain is still ongoing. At that time, Spain is the largest empire on the planet, while the Great Britain has recently colonized part of America. They were fighting with each other over who is the best country on earth, and ships are an opportunity for British seamen to increase the slave labor in the name of spreading civilization. At that time, the War of Jenkins' Ear caused by Robert Jenkins has been ongoing. Jenkins will accuse Spain for accusing him of smuggling out of Spain and punish him by cutting his ear, which he dramatically said he put in a jar of pickle to preserve. The case is then spread by news from the Gentleman's Magazine, which put out a lot of unchecked information and further dramatized them. The same with any newspaper to this day. Which, by the way, if you ever heard anyone say journalism is dead nowadays, they've only shown that they have not been reading enough. But back to the book. Jenkins here is a good excuse for Britain to attack, so they put out 6 ships along with the Centurion to secretly and stealthily rob Spain's galleon in their trade route at Cape Horn. This plan of war is what caused the repair of the ships to be halted, since beside the Centurion, the other squadron of the ship, the Gloucester, the Pearl, and the Sovereign, are all in a state of needing repair with parts decaying due to termite, rats, swarm, etc. Meanwhile, the Waker is a ship that feels really out of place in the squadron. Unlike the other ships that are top-of-the-line man of war that is the highest technology of the time, the Wedge is a trade ship that is patched to be able to become the lowest class of man of war. Its captain, Dandy Kidd, is the son of William Kidd that inspired characters like Eustace Kidd from One Piece and many other Captain Kidd, and because of his father's influence, he is highly superstitious. And already, many omens started for the Waker. After retrofitting the Waker until it can set sail as a man of war, it got stuck in the Thames due to winter freezing the water. The captain then asked it to be repainted to look new because at the dock, other seamen was making fun of its look that feels like a try-hard geek trying to look tough. Then it also had one big problem. It doesn't have any men on board the ship besides its captain. Many seamen caught deadly sickness at that time due to the disease known as the sea fever, which we now know is typhus. The ship that has been traveling for long distances are filthy and has been collecting uncountable amount of bacteria, making it a floating carrier of disease. Even 25 of the crew of the main ship Centurion died to typhus before the mission started. Not being able to get the number of crew they needed by peaceful means, the British took a drastic turn to violence and started using impressment, where they basically kidnap seamen that is not planning to go to the sea by sending them goons known as the press gang. Of course, a lot of them escape as soon as they can, even those with wooden legs hobbling away. A total of more than 240 men managed to get away from the squadron. So the only crew available to the ship are mostly people who are not able to escape. They're either sick, fragile, invalid, or really old and frail. These are perhaps the saddest crew of all times. Nationalism is truly a scam. Then finally, after a year of being stuck in the harbor, the squadron finally set sail to the Atlantic to finish their heroic quest. Just kidding, they were pushed back by the wind to go back where they belong every time they reached the English Channel. So they stuck against waiting for the wind to shift, but finally in September 18, they had a favorable wind and managed to reach the ocean. John Byron, a 16-year-old, has been on board of the Waker for 2 weeks, sleeping in the vault near the amputating devices. He's a rare healthy boy from noble background that was in the ship willingly because at that time, British tried to coax people into the Navy with promises that after 6 years and an exam, their career at the sea is basically guaranteed. But again, he's the exception. Most of the crew are there unwillingly. The cook, Thomas McLean, is an 80 years old. The chief navigator, Thomas Clark, had to bring his son into the ship. And the boatswain, John King, and the carpenter's mate, James Mitchell, looked disturbingly dangerous for the Navy. There's even a free black seaman from London named John Duck that, unlike his white crewman, is in danger of being sold to slavery instead of being treated as a prisoner of war if he is captured during the mission. They even had 2 Marine Army assigned to the ship, a captain named Robert Pemberton and a lieutenant named James Hamilton, who got assigned to the ship because he got into a fight with a fellow army man and threatened to duel him into a knife fight. And here, Byron had to learn so much about how to work in a ship. The skill he needed, the language they speak with each other, the way of guard, and of course the sea shanties. He even got a new name in the ships during this expedition, Jack Tar. Then on October 25, 1740, the squadron finally arrived at Madeira, a small island northwest of Africa. They had another problem here with the captain of the Gloucester abandoning ship, making them having to change ranks on the crew members. As a result of this, the captain of the Pearl was made into the captain of Gloucester, the Waker captain, Kidd, was made into the Pearl captain, even David Chipp, the first lieutenant of the Waker, was made into the captain of another ship, the Trial. The Waker ends up with a new captain and a new member, George Murray and Alexander Campbell, who had a very posh attitude and looked down on other members of the ship. But that's not the end of their problem. Spain just found out about their secret mission to steal from them, and they were understandably not happy about it. So they sent 5 ships from Spain that are much stronger than them to hunt them down. The Wakers should have their first attack, but not from the other ship from Spain or even pirates. The attack came from typhus bacteria that has been clinging to their ship. It got into a member of the ship and soon spread into an onboard epidemic. Unfortunately, the ship surgeon Henry Ettrick, who is said to be really good at cutting people's limbs like all doctors at the time, is not equipped to handle typhus. This is before medical science progressed enough for us to understand germs, so they can only keep them on their bed at most. By December, there are more than 65 crew members who have passed away due to this epidemic among the squadron, and those that survive the sickness are left so weak they can barely function on the ship. On December 17, they arrived at the island of St. Catherine and rest briefly there where more members died to the sickness. A total of about 160 out of 2,000 of the squadron had died by the time they continued their journey, and on January 18, 1741, they arrived at Cape Horn, welcomed by a storm that separates the Pearl from the squadron. The Pearl also came out of the storm close to all 5 of the Spain ships that are after them. The ship managed to escape after getting a few shots because they went through a suspiciously shallow looking water, but they not only had received a lot of damages, they also had to throw away every supply they have on the ship to gain speed, and worse, Captain Kidd died from the fight. So they need to reshuffle the rank of the squadron again. George Murray was promoted to become captain of the Pearl, and David Chip went back to the Waker, promoted as its captain. They went to St. Julian because they need to fix the trial until February 27, then continued their journey past Andes mountain range until March 6, where they reached Tierra del Fuego, where they continued to be battered by storm after storm. And finally they reached the dangerous Drake Passage, where they now also had to face the deadliest disease on seafaring after months of sea travel: scurvy. They had no idea what caused it at that time because again medical science is not a thing back then, so they had no idea that it's because of a lack of vitamin C that is very common on everyday food, even if it's British food. Almost everyone at the ship got scurvy, even Captain Chip that got his own run in the ship. And at that time, the one thing they rely on is the infamous pill and drop that is said to be able to miraculously cure anything and everything from Dr. Joshua Ward, one of the historical early examples of a quack doctor. As a result of the disease, every day about 8 to 10 men and boys were listed as DD, discharged dead. Some ships from the squadron lost 3/4 of the ship member. The Severn lost a lieutenant, and the captain raised a new member of the ship to a lieutenant, only for the new lieutenant to die the next day. Even Henry Chip's, Captain Chip's young nephew, was dead one day due to scurvy. And they have since been stuck there until the end of March, unable to find a way out of Drake Passage, that they had to circle back to the storm that they have escaped, just to be able to know more about where they currently are. But at the time, the squadron has lost most of its members, and what's left of them are so tired that some ships don't even have members that are capable to raise their sail, so the speed of every ship are different. On April 10, 1741, still stuck in Drake Passage, the Severn and the Pearl are lost from the squadron. Then in April 19, the Centurion is missing. Then finally, the Waker is left alone in the water. Despite this, Captain Chip still decided to go with a mission to attack Valdivia, hoping that it'll get them to be reunited with the other ship on their mission. They go through even more storm and more bodies needs to be dumped to the ocean, and it's getting harder for them to see, not just because of the constant storm, but also because some members have gone blind due to lack of vitamin A. And inevitably their ship crashed to rocks and they strand themselves on the Gulf of Penas, also known as the Gulf of Sorrow or Gulf of Pain. And since the journey seems to be a series of as if things couldn't get worse, Captain Chip, who is trying to help the crew, took a wrong step and tumbled down to the bottom of the ship, landing on his shoulder enough to make bones come out. The ship surgeon gave him some opium, and for the first time since he became the captain of the Waker, he fell into a deep sleep while the crew and the ship is now stuck between two great rocks that kept it from sinking. Using the longboat attached to the ship, the crew took this opportunity to escape to a nearby island, rowing the boat back and forth. Some crew do refuse to go, intending to drown their sorrow with the remaining alcohol on the ship until they drown, which didn't last long. When the ship was about to fully drown, they shot the ship cannon asking for help. And now they are all stranded on this island that nobody knows where. There were no shelter, no food, and no help seems to be close. All because of a guy who got his ear cut off because he stole, lied that he's been mistreated by Spain, and we've just gone through half the book. The book might only be listed as 240 pages, but it is so dense from edge to edge with a small font that it will take you a while to go through the book, but it had such a compelling story, and the misery of the Wakers still hasn't stopped. Everyone there split off and created their own community, with some blaming their captain for their fate. The island they're in trapped them, and so far there is only a few small woodcocks that they shot and a few wild berries. There's no fruit and not even root for them to chew on beside these small things. But everyone finally settled and built their own makeshift home. But here's the thing with communities without law. Some will try to take things for themselves. There were a few deaths that looks like murder and some robbery happened. While there is suspicion to Mitchell and King, the dangerous looking dudes, some of the people who chose to drink out the ship's alcohol before they forcefully demanded to be rescued, but there's no clear evidence to them. It didn't take long until winter came and with its snow and blizzard and a surprise visit from people who arrived in their canoe. These are the Kaweskar, the indigenous people that is the most adapted to cold temperature compared to others, so much so that in the future, scientists study them to learn more about how to survive in a cold environment. But in the past, European explorers tried to paint them as cannibals without evidence to justify their assault and slavery. Prior to the group being stranded there, two of the younger Kaweskar was captured by the Spanish who put them in chains then boasted that they've converted them to Christian, but the two died on the ship due to mistreatment. So they were rightfully wary of the weaker crew that is currently stranded there. Thankfully, Byron and Campbell managed to convince them that they're not hostile. They bring them to Captain Chip who is trying to befriend them in the hope of getting food for the crew. And they did. The Kaweskar who have been victim of the European assault helped the crew. At first they went away, but they come back with so much food, even some sheep. Then later they went back with families and for a few days will live there as a community together, quickly building everyone home and showing them how to get fish there. Unfortunately, once again, the group led by Mitchell met some trouble by trying to get with the woman of the Kaweskar, so they left one night after realizing the danger of staying there. Now they went back to their previous helpless self. They cannot find food without the Kaweskar helping them, and every day their supply gets less and less. Byron became friends with a dog that was left behind when the Kaweskar escaped, but it didn't take long until people came and killed the dog for food. It also didn't take long for murder to start again and people got more and more angry at Chip that they deem as responsible for their fate and built their own community away from the crew with Mitchell as their leader. The situation deteriorated quite quickly with robberies starting non-stop. Chip that got more and more insecure with his position ends up killing a crew named Henry Cousin after they got into a fight multiple times. Thankfully for them, one of their carpenter Cummins made a plan to use the longboat they had to craft an ark to escape the island. The crew member then was separated into another two parties, one led by the gunner John Bulkeley and the carpenter John Cummins to go escape safely to Brazil. But Captain Chip still wanted to have a shot at Spain and take one of their vessels with his crew that is starving using this makeshift raft. Thinking that Chip's plan is dumb, Cummins and Bulkeley eventually captured and held Chip in prison along with his guard Harrison. While they made this plan, the group led by Mitchell, who has been making so much problem, decided to leave on their own with their own makeshift raft. Since Mitchell is also a carpenter, they were never seen again. Then finally, the group left Chip and another 9 people who doesn't want or not accepted to finish 3 raft because of how small it is. The party then split again when Byron, finding out that their leaving Captain Chip, decided to take one of the raft back to go rescue Chip. Bulkeley will head south, losing many lives along the way, even one of the 2 rafts he commands, eventually reaching England at the start of the book. Meanwhile, Chip and Byron head north and go into their own journey with 19 members, who are reduced to eventually the 3 men who came 6 months after Bulkeley arrived at England. The book is an amazing look into history, not just the disastrous event that surrounds the Baker, but everything about the journey that they took and the places they go to and the history behind each of them. There are so much from this book that I didn't get to go through because it's just that dense with information and none of them are boring. I chewed through this book so quickly despite having to write my script of the book and check the sources the book gave and do further research from there to make this video. It is that engaging. Anson and the Centurion also eventually return and together every ship has basically gone from one spot of the world back to it from the other side. It's such a wild journey that started because Britain wanted to find an excuse to go to war with Spanish, so they sent this poor excuse of a crew. 6 ships sailed at the start and only 1 returned, and 3/4 of the crew, so about 1,300 people out of 2,000 died during the voyage, way more than the standard of even such long journey, and they gained nothing that is comparable to what they've lost. The crew of the Waker will eventually reunite during the sham trial where everyone is considered innocent, even when everyone has gone against the law in some way to get where they are now because Britain at that time wanted to close this chapter of history as quick as possible. Sweep it under the rug, which makes sense because at the end of the day, they are the villain, not this crew that has been forced to go against all odds. It's such a massive tale and with so much story to tell, I wonder how Martin Scorsese is going to direct the adaptation of the book because if he cram in everything that the book offers, I can easily see the movie going to 5 to 6 hours or more because even Killer of the Flower Moon was about 4 hours. And just like Killer of the Flower Moon, it's an interesting look into history at the various practice of white supremacy throughout the world. From the two indigenous people that came out on the story, one of them went extinct and another is in danger of being eradicated due to constant attack from European settlement at the time. It's one of those reads that will be a learning moment. I easily give this a 5. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.